Hello, fellow Manor Lords. I'm sure you've heard by now that a massive patch just dropped in open beta, which contains a long list of game-changing updates. In this video, we'll play through starting a new town with all of the new updates, explaining everything along the way. The amount of changes and additions with the update is pretty extensive, so there's still some work to be done in order to prepare a completely optimal layout with some new guides. And since we're on the beta, there are some things that will likely be reworked. But we have plenty to get through here, and this will be jam-packed with information that I'll be narrating all throughout the playthrough. I'm also working on new condensed and edited guides with revamped strategies for everything, so make sure to keep checking in for updated information. Let's go ahead and select one of the new maps, and we'll just focus on creating our town, taking into account all of the changes with food and other resources, buildings, approval, and more. So we can choose where we want our starting location to be now, but the resources that you get in each region are still random. So don't be afraid to re-roll a few times in order to try things out or get a better setup. As we get started, let's briefly take a look at the resource options that we'll primarily be looking for here. So of course, one of the first things that you want to think about is what food is available in your region. Overall, I think the ranking from my food tier list will still apply for the most part. There have definitely been some changes to the production rates and the side benefits, such as hunting now providing pelts instead of hides. But I think that a rich berry deposit is still the most convenient food source overall to have in your region. They still have really strong production rates and cost basically nothing to collect. Or now there are mushroom deposits as an alternative as well. Fishing is also really good and convenient still, so I would suggest looking for either of these options to be in your region if you want a bit of an easier start while trying out the updates. Like I mentioned, the hunting does offer a bit of a cool advantage now that pelts are a decent option for early trade income, but there are plenty of other options for trade income, so I would still prefer getting a berry or fishing deposit. And especially if it's a region with a strong bonus from the woodland environment affinity, which seems to be pretty common currently. As far as non-food resources, I would most likely prioritize getting an iron deposit at this point if possible. The need for tools with maintenance requirements is now something that you need to keep up with at all times. So being able to craft those without having to spend regional wealth on importing them is really nice, especially in the beginning. You could also look for a rich stone deposit because then you could build a quarry and produce the new dress stone blocks to use for your castle construction. I won't focus on that too much here, but if you're interested, I have posted another guide specifically about the castle planner and all the related information. And lastly, clay is still a pretty good option as well, since you can still use it for trade and producing clay tiles that you'll need to upgrade your church and houses. Alright, so we got our region here. We're on the new Lake Lem map, and it looks like we have a rich mushrooms deposit, which like I said is kind of another option, same as rich berries. So we can test that out here a little bit too. You guys can see how that works. We have a rich clay deposit, which like I said is still pretty good for trade or for having the resources that you need to make building upgrades. We have a regular fishing deposit, which is still good. Obviously, if it was rich, that would be even more ideal as far as the food production, but we've got a rich mushroom node over here, so having also a regular fishing deposit is also pretty good on top of that. We've got a regular stone deposit right here, which will give us access to the rubble stone. We won't be able to produce the stone blocks at the from the stone quarry. You need to have a rich stone deposit to be able to access that within your region, but that's fine. In this playthrough, we're not really going to focus too much on creating a castle or anything. I have another video here on my channel which shows specifically the castle planner and all the details associated with getting the resources that you need, the new stone blocks and all that kind of stuff. And lastly, we have a regular iron node over here, which is, once again, you know, it'd be great if it was a rich node, but you can't have everything, right? So this looks like a pretty decent setup. The other thing I noticed right away is that all these resources are pretty close to our initial settlement area. So that's even more convenient because, as we know, the logistics of having to transport all the resources between the buildings and throughout your town is always something that's going to be a factor. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the starting setup is pretty much the same as it was before. There are some differences which we will review here, but one of the main things I like to do first of all is connect the town to the main road, to the King's Road. That way we will be able to allow traders, traveling traders, to get access into our town once we build a trading post in here and such. Cool. So as always, you do need logging. You do need lots of timber and logs to start out your town. So we'll go ahead and build a logging camp. Put it right over here next to this forest area, and it's near our starting location as well, so that's really good. And let's get a road attached here. And same thing as before, I'll start with a second hitching post as well, so we can get a second ox in our town and speed up the process of moving these logs around, because we'll have plenty of building tasks here in the beginning. So as soon as that's done, then we'll get our next task going, which is going to be to build storage buildings. So we'll go ahead and get that second ox in here. And logging camp's coming up. And once again, we'll notice that a lot of these buildings now require tools. Before, the tools didn't really have any use, but now the tools are pretty necessary for a lot of things. We'll get more into that in a bit, but you'll notice you'll need the tools for the construction costs right away for things like your logging camp, saw pit, woodcutter's lodge, etc. Basic infrastructure buildings. All right, so let's put let's put someone on there to get started, and we're also going to go ahead and build a granary. And let's take a quick look before we place this. We know we're going to be harvesting the mushrooms from over here and fish from over here, which means that having a granary closer to these areas would be probably pretty ideal, so that they can drop off their resources that they gather quickly. So I'm thinking maybe we'll put it over here, right about here, and we can attach that to our road right there. So we'll get our granary coming in, and then we'll also get a storehouse. And I'm thinking the storehouse might be good over here somewhere on the other side, closer to the other side, because we're going to be making planks over here next to the woodcutter, and then we'll be gathering clay over here and stone and iron. So I'm thinking right over here might be a pretty decent spot for our storehouse. So we'll go ahead and place that as well. And we want to get our initial set of starting supplies here: bread, firewood, rubble stone, tools. We want to get all that stuff safely stored away from the weather, which will be coming soon. We'll be getting rain since we're starting in spring. And once again, this is, I'll be having more, like I have on my channel currently, a more specifically tailored guide for how exactly to get your town started in the most optimal way with a building checklist and whatnot, which will be coming soon. But for now, we're just, there's still more things to work through here, and we're also still on the beta, so some of this stuff might still be subject to change. So you'll notice, though, what I did here on the granary, we'll do the same thing for the storehouses. We'll turn off market stall because we don't have a market yet, and I'm just assigning villagers to work here temporarily so that they can pick up the initial set of starting supplies and get them safely stored. So it looks like we're done, for example, with the wood. See, these guys are waiting, and we can see all the bread that we had to start with is already stored, so we can take those guys off. That's just a temporary measure right now to get those supplies safely stored away. So we'll have another opportunity to start building more things here. Next up, let's go ahead and get our saw pit. Still need plenty of planks as you did before. So let's go ahead and maybe a road right there and saw pit right next to our storehouse and really close by to the logging camp, so we can get that going. Very good, very good. And we'll also want to think about our forager hut over here, which we can put basically just right next to our granary, and it'll be right next to the harvesting area as well. Perfect. Not enough construction materials. Let's see. Oh, we do have the materials. I think they were in transition from our starting supply area to the storehouse, so it didn't register that we had the tools or whatever that we needed, so we're good to go on that. Yeah, and also to that point, there's also, I just wanted to point out real quick, there's a lot of, like, all the tooltip information has been revamped as well. So if you hover over basically any category or anything that has a question mark on it, it gives much more information, much more insights than we had access to beforehand. So definitely make sure you're checking out all the information that's been added on those tooltips and whatnot. And then same thing over here. Let's put our fishing hut in a similar location like we did for our mushroom gathering over here. So we've got fishing and mushroom gathering with our granary right here, and then we'll have housing and a marketplace right here. So we have a very strong food production and residential area coming together on this side. And on the other side, we have a pretty strong resource production area with clay, stone, wood, and iron over here. So we're kind of thinking ahead about the layout of our town. Always important. All right, cool. So that forager hut is done. Fisherman hut is coming in now as well. let's take a look at where we're at on timber and other materials. Let's go ahead and double up on our logging camp. And it looks like that second ox did get here now too, so we're able to transport more of these logs and be more efficient with the timbers right off the bat, which is fantastic. I highly recommend getting a second ox. It'll speed up the process of all this a lot. Cool, so we'll get this fisherman hut finished here. Looks like it's just about done. We'll get a woodcutter's lodge up as well. And once again, we'll put all of our tree cutting stuff over here on this other side because we do not want to we don't want to disturb the trees that are around that mushroom foraging area. Otherwise it could impact the resource node. So you know, just wherever, somewhere over here will be fine. Get some firewood cutting set up as well. Then we'll have everything that we need. So we'll have access to be able to gather food. We can gather firewood, and we'll place a well so they'll have access to water. And that's basically all the starting requirements now. We don't have to worry about clothing as a starting approval requirement now. So the level 1 houses no longer require clothing. So we'll show more about that in just a sec here, but we'll get this woodcutter's lodge done. I forgot to take off our storehouse workers. They've been done with moving those supplies for a little while now, but just make sure you're micromanaging your workforce here in the beginning as best as possible. All right, cool. So now that that's finishing up here, our woodcutter's lodge, let's go ahead and start setting up our residential area. So I'm going to put a marketplace. Like I said, let's just put the marketplace like right here. So it's really close to our granary and the food production, so they can get that stocked up quickly and easily. It honestly doesn't really matter. Let's just build a market like that. I'm not too worried about those types of specifics at the moment. Okay, so that's good, and let's get a couple houses starting to come in here. So maybe let's build the road out like this, and then we can just line some houses here. I don't think we have enough materials for all 5, but let's place like 4 right here for now. Let's get that going. Cool. And while that's going on, let's go ahead and assign 1 person to our forager hut and start foraging mushrooms. Maybe we can get a little bit of these mushrooms harvested before we're at the end of spring, so that it'll regenerate some of the resources that we harvest here. Since, as we know, during spring, the berries, same thing with the mushrooms, you can see here as we're hovering over the tooltip, they will also regrow during spring, just like the berries do, and just like the fish do as well in the lake, the fishing lakes. So that's good if we can get some mushrooms gathered here before the end of spring, and they'll continuously regrow, so we'll be able to stock up a bit more. And we have our housing coming in here. There's 4 done. We need 1 more for our 5th house. Maybe we can just finish up this plot area right here. That way we have a couple extra houses ready for population to grow, for new villagers to move into our town. Let's get ahead on that since we have the materials at the moment. Cool. And so the next thing we're going to think about is we'll start getting our marketplace stocked up with, we'll get the granary and the storehouse over here staffed up, and we'll have them create market stalls here in the marketplace, since now houses are up, which means now they want all of these things. See, we can see now they have access to nothing currently, but we need to start getting them access to everything that they want. So first of all, let's go ahead and staff up granary. Let's turn on market stall setup. And then we're going to take one of these workers from our logging camp. And looks like, are these guys sick? They are sick, yeah. So let's take the other family and put them on the storehouse and turn on market stall there. Now we know that the markets will be supplied with food and firewood, so they'll at least have that. Let's also get a water well, right here. Water well. Let's put one right here, right next to our granary and the market. And then maybe we can also put one over here. Because your villagers will pretty much like constantly go to get water from the well to restock water in their houses and stuff. So having good accessible locations for those is good. And we'll be able to see our houses with residents in them. We'll start to see that they have access to one of the food categories. They're starting to get fuel access. Now they'll have water access. So we're starting to fill out their approval requirements. But once again, you'll see they do not need clothing here. So we're not worried about the clothing, which is another reason why I'm not, we're not too worried about having hunting going on right at the beginning here either. And even if we did, it wouldn't matter because now you get pelts instead of hides, and you can't turn those into clothing. So, but you'll see though they do want two different types of food variety, which is the same as it was before. But you'll see that it's now categorized into different subcategories. So, for example, we have the top category fulfilled because mushrooms are a foraged good, but we'll need to have either some kind of meat, fish, or animal produce on the bottom for the secondary requirement, and we'll be able to get that from our fishing area over here, so that's really good. We did just build the water, and the next thing we need to worry about is, of course, the church. So that being said, our church is going to need planks as a requirement for the construction. So we just spent a lot of timbers on all those building construction tasks that we just did. So let's go ahead and double up on our logging camp again. We need as many timbers as possible here. And we noticed that one of these families, they're all sick. So these guys are not working currently until we're able to, until they get better. Once we get a couple saw planks here, we can also build ourselves an herb garden if we want to. And the herbs are used for curing sick villagers, basically. So we'll have access to that in the near future. You can see we already got a new family moving in there. So we already have an additional family, so that's great. 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so we actually got 2 new families to move in already, right? Because we have 7 total families now. So you can see like the extra leeway. We're not on the challenging settings, of course, here, which would increase the residential demands and the penalties for the approval and stuff. But even just on the default here, you can see how easy it is to get your level 1 housing requirements set up now without needing the clothing. Even without the secondary food source and without the church, you can see we're in the positive on our approval, and we're already growing our population here. So it's a lot more leeway in that regard with the initial requirements. So that being said, we do have more workers available. So let's go ahead and let's take a look here. Once again, they're not sick anymore, so that's great. We're starting to produce more timbers. What we want now is planks. But we need more timbers to be able to produce more planks. So in the meantime, let's think ahead about maybe starting to gather some of this stone. But of course, yeah, never mind. We got to think about the new building requirements. We still need planks here, and we'll need to use another set of our tools. So we do need. Let's at least staff someone here temporarily. We don't want to. We don't have too many timbers available, so we only want them to make a couple of these for now. Let's get a couple planks going, and that way we can have our extra workforce working on something else in the meantime. Very important. Having your villagers constantly working on tasks is definitely paramount. All right, I'd say that's fine for now. That's good. All right, so we can build a stone gatherer camp right here. And just to explain what was going on here, for example, I wanted to staff this saw pit, but I know we have limited timber logs available, so I don't want them to use all of them. So you can go ahead and go to the advanced tab right here, and you can go to your reserve. And so what we're telling them is if we staff this building, then they're going to create planks from the timber. However, once you're down to only having 12 timbers left in your town, then they will halt production until you go back above that number again. Okay. So now that we do have a bit more timbers to work with, we're getting some planks right here. After they finish this set, let's take them off again, and then now we can go ahead and build our church. I believe we should have enough materials. Yep. 5 logs, 20 planks, and 10 rubble stone. As you can see, we have enough up here. And that'll be our last main approval requirement until we get our get fish coming in and they have a food variety available. So let's get our church. I'm thinking over here, let's move this hitching post, get that out of the way. And I'd like to put the church right here. So let's do that. Boom. That way it's not too far from everything else in the town. It's close by to our storehouse for all the construction materials, because the church does, they have to physically transport 20 planks and 10 rubble stone and 5 timbers and stuff. It can take a little while if you place it too far away from wherever you have all these construction materials. We also don't want to fall behind on our housing, so we can continue to build more houses, but I want to let the church get finished up before that. So we'll put these in here, but I want to we'll click the church and put this on a high priority so they make sure that they know that we want to get this done before you move on to building more houses. But this is looking like a pretty decent setup so far. Cool. So the next thing we'll want to think about after we get this church done is maybe starting to gather some fish, and that way we have our secondary food supply. We can also see that our mushrooms, it was good that we got a little bit of work done here in the beginning before spring ended, as the deposit was continuing to regrow, because now it's not regrowing. So, excuse me, it is still regrowing currently. I just noticed that. So we are in July. So yeah, actually, if you take a notice here, I'm just noticing this myself too. So these mushrooms are actually still regrowing. We can see it's here on the tooltip, and I just noticed the number actually go up as we were gathering them. And once again, we're in July, so I'm not sure if this is only for the mushrooms or if it now applies to the berries as well, but you can see here that we are still getting regrowth on our mushroom node during summer, mid-summer actually. So that's very interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see what's going on there. Let's take a look here real quick at our residential demands again, now that we've gotten more set up. So we can see that once again, I'm getting, we're getting a little distracted as I'm, explaining a lot of stuff here. Once again, I'll have a more laid out guide that's more tailored specifically for covering all these, initial demands and everything soon. But you can see we ran out of firewood. It's okay. We'll just staff up our wood cutter here real quick. But other than that, you can see our church is good to go. They have water. They have the first food type, and we'll have firewood is coming. We just kind of forgot about staffing that up real quick, and then we'll have the secondary food coming from the fish right here. So even regardless of those kind of mistakes that we made there, you can see like the approval. It's a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a lot more leeway involved now with like when you're starting out. It's a lot easier to get the initial set of requirements taken care of here. So very nice for, especially if you're a newer player, even if you're a more experienced player. It just it's way more convenient and offers more opportunity to for town growth off the beginning here, and less to have to worry about. That being said, it seems like there is a little bit more to worry about in the long run, such as keeping up with tools and stuff, but we'll get into that more here as we continue to grow our town. So all right, we should be getting another family moving in here pretty soon. There we go, they just moved in. So let's go ahead and assign them to the Fisherman's Lodge. All right, and we can see we're starting to get that firewood going here now, so that's good. Let's keep a couple building tasks going if we're able to. We know, for example, we are still going to need, back in the gathering tab, I'm still getting used to these new construction tabs down here. There used to be a different tab for mining, like quarries and stone gathering and stuff like that, but it's all now just in the gathering tab in the first one. So let's go ahead and put a mining pit here on we want a mining pit on the clay and the iron, and then we already have our stone gatherer camp for that. Actually, let's go for the iron camp first, because we want to start getting iron in supply so that we can create tools and keep up with the demands for that. Let's go ahead and get that set up. And we should notice now, though, that we should start having fish coming in. Yep, we can see we have carp starting to get supplied there, along with our mushrooms. Let's take a look at our housing here. And yeah, so we can see looking really good now, right? As soon as we get the firewood situation back under control, we'll see they'll have every single demand fulfilled already now. So just like that, pretty easy. Let's take a look here at the mushrooms. Looks like they are still regrowing. We're in August now, so I'm just going to keep my eye on that. That's very interesting. I did not realize that the mushroom nodes would continue to regrow beyond spring. Right there, I just saw the number go up again. So it looks like they're regrowing maybe at a slower rate is what I'm noticing. Looks like right there we only gained maybe like 10 mushrooms getting regrown on that tick. So I'm wondering if maybe it's the regrowth rate just kind of goes down as the year progresses, but it does continue to regrow. But yeah, that's definitely something that's a really, really good advantage right there. So as you can see, like a rich mushroom deposit right here is actually working out really well for us. I mean, look how many mushrooms we have in supply here, and we didn't even start gathering them right away. We were in mid-April by the time we started gathering them. So you guys can see for yourselves here the new rich mushroom deposit, very good. So I definitely highly recommend that along with the berries. Okay, so we have this clay mine all set up here. We have new families moving in. Let's get that staffed up and start to get clay coming in. I know a lot of people have expressed that it's been tough to keep up with the tool requirements and that the mining of the iron and such is really slow. So we'll take a look at that here. I have a couple insights into that as well. Before we do that real quick, I want to, where is the trading post, logistics, trading post? We're going to get a trading post here. Let's just place that right there. Get ready to start conducting some trade. And everything else is looking pretty decent for now. Firewood's catching up. Really good on food. Now we're starting to get a very strong supply of 2 different food types. And let's take a look at our timbers. Timbers are looking good, so let's also stock up our saw pit again and start getting that going. Cool. So one thing I wanted to point out here with the mining and the iron and the tools and that whole situation is a lot of people, I think, are falling into the trap where they upgrade to the deep mine right away if they happen to have a rich iron deposit, because now that is an option, since I've mentioned, in other videos, and we'll take a look at here a little bit more, is that some of the buildings that you had to unlock beforehand with a development point are no longer locked behind a development point. The deep mine was one of those things that you previously had to unlock in the development tree. Now it's just available standard. However, if you upgrade to a deep mine, and this was the same as it was before, when you upgrade to a deep mine, the production rate of the miners goes down significantly. That being said, I think it is bugged. I did read from one of the Manor Lords staff that there is bugs right now currently with, I think they are going to be adjusting like the rates of the mining, the iron mining, and the tools and all that kind of stuff. So. But that being said, if you do have an iron deposit and it's a rich deposit, do not upgrade it to a deep mine unless you've already exhausted the regular amount of supplies. And then, at that point, you basically have no option but to take the deep mine. So yeah, that's good. But don't put the deep mine if there's still regular resources. Just mine it regular. The production rate of the regular mine compared to the deep mine is significantly more. So keep that in mind. I will say though, even regardless of that, I haven't really had too much trouble with keeping up with the tools requirements personally, with just having 1 or 2 families on a regular iron mine and producing tools from that. So we'll see how it goes here, but hopefully it's not too bad. Let's get a couple more houses up because we're just continuing to get population growth, so we'll get that going. Let's take a look here. What's going on with our planks situation? Are they not making planks? Waiting, guiding an ox, waiting. Yeah, so this is a little bit confusing here with our saw pit. Let's go ahead and try to reset it maybe. Reassign them. Maybe some kind of issue with the reserve. See, so see, this is the type of stuff that might be a little buggy right now. See, I turned down the reserve and it looks like now they're bringing logs to the saw pit now, which I had it on 12 reserve before, which should be fine because we can see we have 20 some timbers in reserve. So there might be some little buggy things like that you'll encounter here in the beta, but just play around with it and it'll probably fix itself at some point with something like that. You can see now we are producing the plank, so it's all good. Let's take a look here. We have a warning, work area is empty. All right, so we've now finished the mushrooms, so check that out. Let's take a look here. We got 251 mushrooms in supply, and we didn't even start harvesting them right off the bat while it was the max regeneration rate during the spring, and we've been consuming them the entire time as well. So you can see that the rich mushroom deposit here, very strong. I definitely recommend that. So hopefully you guys can get a good look at that and see for yourselves. Yeah, mushroom deposit, very nice. We like that. Cool, and we're going to get a little bit more fish here coming in as well before the pond freezes over in the winter. and then we'll get back to seasonal harvesting again in the upcoming next year. So, but as you can see, I mean, let's take a look here. If we hover over here, it says we have food for 18 months, technically 19 months for our current population. So, yeah, I mean, the food production, if you get a couple of these decent food resource nodes within your region, shouldn't really have too much problem with that, keeping up with that. It's just, of course, as your town continues to grow, obviously you run into more problems, but as far as getting started here, you can see it's pretty easy if you just have access to a couple of those resource options, which once again, if you don't, I would recommend just re-roll your startup, and you'll probably get one of them soon. I'm going to put a forester's hut over here so we can replant trees around our harvesting area. But yeah, we are looking pretty good already, to be honest, on a lot of things. Let's see, we have a good amount of planks, so I'm going to take these guys off from there, and we're going to assign trade, and we're going to go ahead and start to export some planks here. Let's set a surplus of maybe 30, so we keep 30 planks around in our town just in case we need them. That's good. And since we still have extra workers available, let's staff up our stone gatherer. They'll gather this stone really fast because it's very close by to the gathering camp and the storehouse, and there's not many of them in the first place. Let's also take a quick look here. So you can see, I mean, we recently assigned that one family to the iron mine. We have, 7 or 8 iron ore coming in so far, so it's not too bad. It is a little bit far away, so there's a little bit of walking distance involved here too, which kind of slows it down. But by the time we'll end up needing tools in the upcoming year for maintenance and whatnot, we'll have those under production, no problem. So that being said, let's go ahead and think ahead about that with our industry. We can go ahead and get we're going to need a bloomery and a smithy to go ahead and turn the iron into the iron slabs, and then turn the iron slabs into tools. So we can place those. Let's maybe put those somewhere over here near the rest of our production area. Yeah, that's fine. Smithy. Let's go smithy right here, and then, or other way around, bloomery right here and smithy right here. Doesn't really matter. Once again, just as long as they're in close proximity to your storehouse and everything else, then you're good to go. If you've watched any of my other guides, you of course know how important it is to keep up with the logistical setup and keep that in mind at all times for any playthrough. Basically, this game is highly dependent on transportation distance, and all that kind of stuff is a very, very important factor in this game, that's for sure. And it's always a factor in any playthrough at any challenge level. But this is looking pretty good. See, we're up to well, it's hard to tell because some of the iron's being transported between the mine to the storehouse. We don't have an accurate count here necessarily, but like I said, we should be able to keep up with that, no problem. I'd also like to upgrade the storehouse here at this point because we have enough resources and labor, so let's do that. Upgrading the storehouse, as I've mentioned before in other videos too, it does of course give you more storage space in your storage building, but the other benefit is that then they also get access to more hand carts. As you can see, if we zoom in here, see he just came and grabbed that hand cart there. I have it on the super fast setting right now because we're not trying to sit and watch paint dry, but you can see though the additional hand carts is a big bonus. So upgrading your storehouse or your granary, same thing. Granary does also require stone and some other stuff to upgrade as well, and I'm not too worried about that one since we have it very close proximity to our food production and our marketplace and everything. But the storehouse is definitely important to upgrade because you'll have, I mean, we already have at least 5 or 6 variety of different things going on that needs to be moved around. I would also say we should probably increase our staff up to 2 people in the storehouse now at this point, to be honest. So we'll go ahead and do that. Looking good. So we cannot fish during the winter now because we don't have the winter fishing perk, and matter of fact, it's no longer even a thing. The winter fishing development point doesn't exist anymore. Cool. So we can let's just check in on where we're at on all of our stuff here. Yeah. Oh, actually, so we can see we're actually starting to produce. We've got 15 iron slabs already. So, I mean, you know, that's enough for, let's take a look here. Iron slab, production limit. Iron slabs into tools. I believe it's 2 iron per tools. I believe it's 2 iron per tool, so I mean we should, you know, we already have enough to, as you can see, we're about at the end of our initial tool supply. But we have enough to really, you know, to start producing them and keep up with them. Like I said about the stone, that went really fast. You can see they already collected all the stone that was here, so we can just unassign and delete this building. We're done with that. There's no more stone to collect in our region. You can see we are starting to make some small sales with planks, so that's good. Next thing we want to do is get charcoal under production and start selling that. Charcoal is another one of these things that was locked behind a development point previously, but it is now available as a standard building option. Let's go ahead and get that going right here. So charcoal, if you've watched, you know, my videos before, you'll know I've harped on charcoal is basically the most ideal item that you can sell. It's the most profitable item that you can sell. There are some adjustments now to the trade. I would still highly suggest using charcoal as one of your main sources of income from trade. We'll take a look here. I've already shown this in a couple of other videos too real quick, but in the fuel category here, for example, charcoal, we can unlock this trade route. It only costs 30 regional wealth to unlock the major trade route now. It cost 100 before, so it's significantly cheaper now. So we'll go ahead and purchase this trade route, and we'll start exporting charcoal. We don't need any surplus in the town right now. Just sell any that we make because we'll just use regular firewood for our town. So that's great. I highly recommend still selling sell charcoal. That being said, the trade route unlock is cheaper, but you'll notice that the export price has also been kind of reduced a little bit. I believe it was 5 regional wealth per export before, so we're gaining a little bit less. Now we're only going to gain 3 regional wealth per export. That being said, like I still think this is still one of the most highly profitable things that you can sell. 1 firewood still sells for just 1 regional wealth. 1 firewood turns into 2 charcoal, so essentially you're turning 1 firewood into 6 regional wealth if you go ahead and do this. That being said, there are probably some other trade options that are just as good or nearly just as good or maybe even better than charcoal at this point. I haven't had the time to look to do too much data testing with other options. I do know though that if you have, for example, a rich iron node and you have extra available that you're not using for tools or military productions like, you know, weapons or crossbows or things like that, you could create the, I believe, where is it? Construction, crafting materials. This one, crafting materials, iron parts. Iron parts are also pretty good to sell because they same thing with firewood where you get double. You turn, you know, one firewood into 2 charcoal. Same thing with the parts. You get 2 parts per iron slab. So these are not bad to sell as well, and they have a pretty decent selling price. I haven't tested them out too much in the new build, and like I said, there are probably other items that are also really good to sell now at this point, but I would still recommend charcoal. Highly recommend charcoal. You do not need to unlock it with a development point. You can put a charcoal kiln right away. It only costs 2 timber. Obviously, you're going to be collecting firewood anyways. It's just a win-win-win. I would highly recommend just still use charcoal. So we're going to go, we did set that up. We're going to go ahead and be selling charcoal. As soon as we get the money, we'll go ahead and buy a horse as well, because same thing. Trade, like the mechanics of trade, have not really been adjusted in any way. Some of the trade values and such have been, as we just took a look at there, but the mechanics of trade are pretty much the same. So like I've mentioned in other trading guides and such, having a horse for your trade workers is just imperative. That's where you're going to get majority of your sales. They'll make bulk sales with the horse. Cool. So we got a hitching post ready for when we need to get up to 60 regional wealth, and then we'll go ahead and buy a horse, and then we'll be cranking out much more production on our trade. So we did move our guy from the bloomery to the smithy, so now he's producing tools. As you can see, we're up to 13 tools now. We still have a few iron left to go through, so up to 15 tools now. So once he's done using the iron that we have, we'll have a decent amount of tools again. So as you can see, and I've just had one person on the iron node, on the iron deposit, and then I just had one family working on the bloomery, and then I moved them to the smithy. So I've only had two total families working on this, and the one over here on the bloomery and the smithy I've only been working for the past, couple months or so. These guys have been working for, majority of the time so far. So really just one family full time, then we've had a second family, kind of part time here. And, look, we're up to 21 tools now. So I don't think it's that bad. Hopefully you can see here that, if you just kind of approach it like that, maybe get a little bit more of a head start on placing your iron mine and put a family on that. So you're starting to build up some iron resources, a little bit ahead of time. And that way you can get ahead of the curve on, having the materials that you'll need to produce the tools, and just basically staying ahead of that is the name of the game there, right? So I haven't really found it to be too bad so far. That being said, of course, there will come a point where our iron node will deplete, since we don't have a rich iron node and we can't go to a deep mine or anything like that. And then at that point, whatever tools we've created by that point, obviously we'll probably only have, a couple years left to utilize from that point. And then obviously we'll have to resort to trade to import either iron to produce our own, or just import straight up tools. As we can see, we did make a couple sales there already, so we have enough for our horse. Let's go ahead and order that, and then our trade is going to ramp up big time, so we'll keep an eye on that. And side note, we can use the records tab over here in the trade tab. This did already exist, but you can always come over here and see, like for example, we had a foreign trader come and he bought 26 charcoal for 78 regional wealth, just like that. Boom. This is still really early on. We just barely bought it and stuff, so we'll be making way more bulk trades than that. But there is also, real quick, I want to point out this resources tab over here too. So if we want to look at, for example, planks in the past 12 months, let's see like what's going on with our plank, production. How much have we been producing? How much have we been consuming, etc. So you'll have access to, and you can click on basically any, we can add rubble stone in here too, and we can see, for example, like where the production rates, the consumption, the balance. You can see the time frames all down here, etc. So, and you can just unclick or click any resource that you want, and it'll show up in the graph here. So that's another cool little feature to utilize. So as we're making our trades here, we can go ahead and come up to the trade tab and keep an eye on what's going on, and if we're making, how our trades with the charcoal are going, and all that kind of stuff. So this is a good way to make comparisons and see what adjustments you might want to make. So we're back into a new year of spring here, so we're going to want to get our food production staffed up again. But you can see, look how much food we still have sitting around. We still have, 13 months supply of food sitting around. So, we are really, really good on food supply and all that. But let's go ahead and staff up there and staff up here, so we'll get more fish and mushrooms coming in again. We can also continue to build more houses. And let's go ahead and build a very large house. Redo this road right here real quick. And what I want to do is build maybe like that. And so I'm kind of making the outline for a large backyard plot that we'll place in here. Which once again, if you've seen any of my other guides, you've seen this technique used many times. The backyard plots for veggies and apples are a little bit different, which we'll take a look at here in just a sec. But as far as being able to draw out the plots and put them in, you'll see right here, it's pretty much the same exact process. Here we can follow along the road. See, we've got a nice large backyard space right there, double plot in the front, etc. That all works the same as it did before, so no problem. And we'll get a big plot here, and I'll show you in a sec the differences in the backyard plots for veggies or apples, for example. Orchards are going to be another one of those things that were removed from the old development tree. As far as now, you can add orchards to any housing extension without needing to unlock it from the development point. So we do have the option of putting orchards in right away on basically any housing plot. But real quick, let's take a look here. As you can see, the orchards are available right here, like I said, even without any development point. We still have the chicken coops and the animal pens, and then the vegetable gardens. But the main difference between with the vegetable gardens and the orchards, when we select one of these, you'll see there's subcategories of vegetables or trees to plant. You also have the option now to add the apiary to any backyard housing extension. However, at the current moment, honey is now, it's not an actual food source, it's an ingredient. But in the current setup, it's supposed to be an ingredient for, if we go here and if we look up in resources and we scroll down to the bottom here, we will find right here. I'm not even going to try to say it because I'll probably just butcher it. But basically, these are, you know, cookies that will require honey. And then there's also mead right here, which looks like it will require honey as well. But in the current setup, there's no way to produce either of these things. I'm assuming we'll end up getting an upgraded version of the brewery extension. And same thing for the bakery to, you know, make the mead or the cookies. So that will probably be coming in the near future. But for now, honey is basically just kind of a filler item. But that being said, let's go ahead and build a veggie garden on our big plot here, kind of like we would normally do before, but let's take a look at the difference. So right off the bat here, you can see it does not cost regional wealth. It costs 2 planks to put in the vegetable garden. But then after this vegetable garden is put in with the planks, then now we get access to the menu, which tells us the different types of vegetables that are available that we can plant. And as you can see, these cost regional wealth. And the prices are kind of different based on the different categories. And you'll notice that based on how big you make your plot, the price of planting these seeds will be relative to that. So if our plot was like half of this size, the price to plant the seeds would probably be, you know, about half of that price. If we made the plot even bigger than this, double the size, then the price would be double of this price. So the price of, you know, I still recommend making a couple of these really large backyard extension areas for vegetable garden or orchards or both. But you just got to think ahead about, it's going to cost regional wealth. So you got to make sure that you're thinking ahead about that. You can't just place them. I think before it cost only 15 regional wealth, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, for these veggie gardens, no matter how big they were. So it was pretty easy to place a couple of them right off the bat before you even had trade going, really. At this point, you do kind of need to get trade going if you want to put, at least if you want to make, you know, a couple of large ones in the beginning. You do need some trade going before that point. We'll just pick any one of these. If you hover over the tooltips, that you'll see they have different like growth periods. So for example, the beetroots here, it says they have a low yield, but they only take 10 weeks to grow. Versus like the standard, the carrots, you know, we can see those take 14 weeks to grow, but they provide a medium yield. And then now the highest tier option, I guess, would be the cabbages, which take 18 weeks to grow, but then it says you get a high yield. So you can choose, you know, lower yield with quicker grow time, or higher yield with longer grow time, or, you know, in between. Let's add a housing extension here to this one as well, because anytime you have a large you know, backyard area like that, you definitely want to have a double housing extension, because only the people that live on that plot will be able to work these fields here. So we want to make sure that we have the maximum amount of residents. Cool. So we'll have people moving into this housing area here pretty soon, and as soon as we make a couple more trays, we'll go ahead and plant some vegetables there, and we'll get that going. But we're in the second year here, and you can see how smooth things are going so far. You know, we've got plenty of food, plenty of fuel. We're ahead on tools. We're still stocking up more iron to be able to create, you know, more tools as we move forward. We're starting to get even a third food option set up here now, because we already have fish, we already have mushrooms, and we have a lot of them. So things are going good so far, I would say. I'm still trying to keep an eye on this mushroom node here to see what's up with the growth rate. I do need to do more testing here. I'm kind of thinking out loud right now, so I apologize for that. But I am noticing though that I feel like it might also, see, look, a tick just went up right there, and we only gained like what, 15 mushrooms or so. I'm wondering if we want to maybe hold off on staffing this and let it regrow a bit more, similar to how the fishing deposits or hunting deposits work. It might be that same way now for the mushrooms or berries, or maybe you kind of want them to be above half or so to have a higher regrowth rate. We'll test that out a bit here. I mean, we're not struggling for food anyways. We still have like 200 mushrooms sitting around in our town currently, so we'll hold off. I took them off right now, so we'll see what happens here. We'll keep an eye on this over the coming weeks and or months or whatever. Nice. See, we just made a good sale right there. So now we have enough for, we can plant whatever we want. Beetroots, carrots, cabbage. So, I mean, let's just go ahead and do beetroots because, 18 weeks sounds like a pretty long time to wait for this playthrough video here. Since we're just showing you guys, some techniques here to get through setting up your town and not run into a lot of the common issues of running out of tools, running out of food, low approval, anything like that. So we're just kind of going through the basics here. But it'll be interesting to see. I have done some testing on a couple other playthroughs so far that I have not made videos for, but just to for my own testing, the beetroots are pretty decent. I noticed they're definitely less than what you would get from a traditional veggie garden from before. But it's not bad at all. I haven't really tested out the like the cabbages, for example, to see how much more of a yield are we talking there. But real quick, I'm also going to go over here to our forester's hut. Let's staff that up and let's go to our work area, and I'll press Control and then scroll up on the mouse wheel to increase the work area zone. And let's just tell them that keep this area planted with trees constantly, because we have our timber woodcutter and our firewood cutter over here. And same thing with them, it's always a good idea to set their work area over in the specific forest that you want them to cut the trees, because we do not want them, as they continue to push out here, there might come a point where these trees over here are technically the closest one to their work area, and they'll start to chop these down. And we do not want to interfere with the trees that are around the mushrooms, same thing as the berries, because then it'll destroy those resources. They need to have the trees. So it's always a good idea to manually set the work area of your tree cutting areas to make sure that they stay in the forest area that you want and don't disturb an area that might have hunting or berries or mushrooms or something like that. Okay, cool. So it looks like we have people moving in here. They're starting to plant those beetroots, right? And another thing real quick here that I'll point out, you can't really see it on any of these other houses because they don't really have backyard extensions, but this one does have a backyard extension. So if we press tab, which shows the the information overlay on all of our buildings and stuff, we can see now it does give us a little icon here to show us quickly that this housing extension is producing beetroots. So if we upgraded any of these other houses with like a chicken coop or an animal pen or anything, then we would see that symbol on there too. So it's kind of nice to be able to see as you're tabbing over your town overlay here. You can see what's going on at all your different houses. I'm still kind of keeping an eye on this mushroom node here. It looks like it is regenerating pretty strong now. We're at 88, so I'm very interested to know if the rate of the regeneration here is dependent on how many resources there are currently or not. So we'll keep that in mind. We're at 88 there, just went up to 103. So same thing again, like 15. I think we're noticing about 15 mushrooms per tick, right? So I guess it doesn't really depend on the size of the plot. So we'll just keep that staffed up. Cool. Oh yeah, another thing that I want to mention here is that if we go to our regional tab here, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I have talked about this in other videos. But if we go to our environment tab here, we'll take a look at what biomes and what affinities we have in our region. So real quick, like if we hover over our plot here that has the vegetables, we can see it has this pollination affinity bonus, and we can see we have a chance of extra crop yields. And the effect is 57%, so that's not bad. And that's coming from this right here because we have a strong amount of meadow biome in our environment here. So that comes with the pollination affinity bonus and then also a wilding affinity bonus. So basically it looks like this one gives us a chance for extra crop yields, and then this one is for apiaries for the honey. So that's really good. I noticed basically most of the regions right now are mostly woodland and or meadow, so you'll probably get one of the two of these, or a combination like right now like we have. The meadow one seems to be kind of better for well, it also does we have the growth rate of wild animals, berries, and mushrooms, so that is also really good too. So it looks like this one kind of helps it. The meadow one here helps you a bit more with crop yields and apiary with honey, but the woodland one is a bit better for for our wild mushroom deposit right here. This is also really good. We do have this effect. It's just lower than the other effects. So this one looks like only 39% of our region is classified as woodland. So our effect of this teaming bonus, for example, is just 39% versus the bonus from our meadow pollination affinity bonus over here is 57%. So that's, if you just go to the environment tab here and mouse over any of these, you'll see what bonuses you have, and then any buildings or resources that are being affected by that. So once again, looking at the tooltip here on the mushrooms, we can see affinities teaming. So we can see that it is being affected by that teaming bonus, which is great. So we do have a couple bonuses which are helping us here. So we have additional growth rate from the teaming on our mushrooms here. And so, you know, in that regard, it will be kind of hard to get a, you know, flat production rate, data rate for most of these buildings, because a lot of it will kind of be dependent on these variable factors. So, you know, right now we have a 39%, I don't know, increased growth rate, I guess, or 39% something affecting the growth rate related to these mushrooms here. So, I mean, that is good. Still need to do more testing to, you know, get the detailed specifics of that. But essentially, you know, you just kind of want to try to piggyback on what bonuses you have, and, you know, build things that are in line with that. So we're making the most of our pollination bonus here, our teaming bonus over here. Looks like we don't, you know, fish aren't affected by anything currently. But if we also, you know, there's also some other bonuses. For example, we have a 39% bonus on this affinity here for Pannage, I think it's called. Extra chance yield from pigs. So for example, we could consider, you know, let's put a couple of backyard animal pens. You know, so we can put a couple, I don't, you know, once again, still need to do more testing as far as, you know, what exactly are the production rates and such here. But there is a double advantage with the, with having animal pens with pigs. So if we mouse over the tooltip here, you'll see pigs provide pork. And so pork is what is required now for sausages. So if we put in a butcher shop here, I've pointed out in other videos, but we can take a look here real quick now, is that there's a bunch of subcategories of resources now, including for building resources and also for food. So like meats, for example, you can see here there's beef, chivan, small game, chicken, pork, mutton, and sausages. So there's, you know, before it was basically just meat and sausage. So now there's all kinds of different subcategories. The Butcher's Workshop can only turn actual pork into sausages. So you need pork specifically if you want to create sausages. Mutton and small game and chicken, the rest of those they're just what they are. They cannot be turned into sausages. And the benefit with sausages is that you get double. So if we put in one pork and one salt, which of course you need salt if you want to use the butcher shop to make sausages, but then you get 2 sausages per 1 pork. So that is a really good bonus as far as if you want to put animal pens and put in a bunch of pigs, especially if you have this, you know, a strong effect from this woodland bonus, then you could get a very strong supply of pork to turn into sausages, and that could be really good. Honestly, it looks like we're not too concerned with like food supply here, at least not yet. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. The other thing to consider is that you could put in a bunch of goat pens in the back, because then you get hides. Of course, then the meat that you get from it cannot be turned into sausages or anything, but you do get hides. And hides are now, you know, as I mentioned briefly earlier, different from what you get from the hunting cabin, hunting lodge, which is just pelts. And pelts are not really used for anything other than just trade. I think at this point they're just an early trade item. So hides are actually needed for your tannery if you want to turn them into leather and produce shoes as clothing or anything like that, which you'll end up needing for future level ups of your house. You definitely want to think about maybe putting in some goat backyard extensions to get hides coming in. The other good option would be, of course, to start importing livestock, which is what I think we're going to do here. I think at this point, to be honest, livestock is probably extremely valuable. So I think pretty much once again, I don't want to don't take everything that I'm saying here with a grain of salt, because we're still in the beta and there's still changes yet to come and such. But I do think that basically any town at this point should probably invest in livestock. Livestock just offer too many benefits at this point. Between if you put in the just naturally, they'll give you wool that you can use for trade and for producing yarn, and goes into clothing and such as well. But if you put in the butcher shop, then you'll be able to you can butcher the livestock, and it gives you meat and hides, kind of similar to the goats. So if you set up a bunch of goat pens and livestock, then you should have a pretty good influx of meat and hides. Alternatively, like I said, you could go ahead like this one, since we have the bonus for the Pannage with the pigs. I'm going to go ahead and put some pig pens back here for these housing extensions that we put in with the animal extensions. So we got a few pigs in here, and we can keep an eye on up here to see if we're gaining. It was the pork that we get from the pigs, right? So we can see what's going on with that. We only made like 3 of them so far, so it's not like we're going to get any large amounts or anything, but just for the sake of kind of testing things out here and showing you guys all your options that you have. Let's go ahead and staff up our trading post as well. Livestock trading post. Let's staff that up. Actually, before we do that, I want to make sure that these people who are on our beetroot farm over here, we want to make sure that they, because there are only 2 unassigned workers right now. If we put livestock worker right now, it's going to assign one of these people from the farm, and we do not want that because we want them to only focus on their farming tasks. Before there was, you pretty much had to use a workaround to get the workers, put them at a corpse pit or something, and make sure that they didn't go to a different job. There is a new option on here to make the workers only focus on the farm. Okay, so as far as I understand, there is an option that was added where you could assign your workers here that live on a veggie plot, for example, to be as if they were an artisan, where they only work here at their housing area. I'm not seeing it right now. I did go and look through the Discord and through some comments and such, and I'm not really sure if that's not in yet or if it's coming or what's the deal with that. I apologize, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and use the same trick that I would use before, which is for we'll place a corpse pit and then just assign the veggie workers to a corpse pit. I mean, you do have other options. You could, of course, assign them to a some other job task. I know a lot of people like to assign them to the saw pit, for example, and then they produce planks while they're also doing the other tasks and whatnot. But I'm just going to go ahead and use the corpse pit for now, just to make sure that these families only are focusing on the farming of the beetroots. And once again, I believe I really thought that I don't know if I'm just hallucinating here, but I really thought there was a new option that allows the families to be assigned specifically to their housing extension. If I just missed that here somewhere, please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, yeah, I would suggest still just use the trick where you assign them as a grave digger or to some other sort of job that doesn't take too much of their time and labor. All right, so let's take off someone there from the logging camp. We need at least one family free. Let's build a couple more houses here. Build up. All right, because we do need more families for more tasks that we need to complete here. But yeah, anyways, I mean, honestly, our town is looking really good, right? I mean, we've got we do have more iron still till we can make more tools whenever we need them. We're still totally fine on our tool supply though. And when we do get to the point of needing to buy them, our economy should be strong enough that we can just continually import the the iron or the already produced tools. Once again, we've got plenty of food. We're starting. It looks like we only have a few, but we'll see the beetroot supply start to ramp up too, and then we should have a pretty strong supply of 3 food varieties. We could also upgrade a few of these houses. Let's just go ahead and upgrade 2 of these houses here just to get to the next settlement level, which doesn't matter too much as far as you don't get another development point currently, but just to take a look at those new level 2 requirements and whatnot. And speaking of the development point, I haven't even really touched on that yet, but if you go here to your regional tab to the development, of course the development points tree has been completely revamped. It's just a whole new system now. So We really only have access to the first tier over here right now. Even if you upgrade your town, these are all still coming soon, so they're not implemented yet. But in the first category, so you get one development point in the first category right now. There's plenty to choose from. There's 9 here, 9 new ones to choose from. They all come with benefits as well as a penalty. So you can look through all of these and figure out which one might work the best for you. There's a few that I've been looking at, which I feel like might be some of the most ideal ones as far as for like your town overall, including like food and your standard setup and stuff. But there's a wide variety of different benefits and such that you can choose from here. So let's see. This is one of the ones that I was looking at right here that I just want to point out. Regensburg Guildsman. And once again, because I know a lot of people have been struggling with the iron, keeping up with iron and the tools maintenance and all that. This one does come with a 30% import value reduction on purchasing iron ore. So when we get to the point where like our regular iron ore runs out because we don't have a rich iron deposit to be able to put a deep mine or just have more resources from it in general, obviously that will run out, like I said. So when we get to that point, I believe this development point right here, this perk, the Regensburg Guildsman, is probably going to be really good for a lot of people currently because you can import that iron ore at a reduced value and keep up with your demands with the tools and stuff. The thing to notice here, though, is that the penalty that comes with it is that when you tax your citizens from the manor, it just has a more severe approval loss, which I'll be honest, I don't really think I don't think that's even going to be barely noticeable because the approval requirements are really easy to get now without needing clothing and the ease of access with a lot of the new resources and stuff like that. So, but if this is a concern to you, then obviously don't take this if you are struggling to keep up with approval because you're due to trying to keep up with taxation amounts and stuff like that. But honestly, this really shouldn't be too much of a problem for anyone. I would recommend this perk if you are struggling to keep up with the tool requirements. It also comes with upgrading a burgage plot to the next level requires half of the construction materials, and any regional wealth cost is removed. So that's also a really nice perk. And then you also get additional regional wealth from upgraded burgage plots. So like when you upgrade your houses to level 2, they start to generate regional wealth revenue, so you'll get a little bit more. This one's not really too noticeable unless you have like a really large town with a lot of houses in it, a lot of upgraded houses. The main thing we're looking at here is the reduced price on salt and iron ore. And of course, this could also be really good as well. You could get a win-win out of this with the import value on ore for keeping up with your tools, but also on salt if you're utilizing, like I was mentioning earlier, if you have a strong bonus of the Pannage for the pigs to generate extra food, you could have a large set of, 10, 20, 30 houses that have pig backyards on them. And if you don't have access to salt, or similar with the iron, if you have maybe a regular salt node that runs out pretty quickly or anything like that, then you can switch to just importing the salt, and you can keep up with your butcher's shop's needs to be able to continue to produce sausages. So, and it'll be worth it too, because like I said, you get 2 sausages from 1 pork. So if you are able to get cheap salt imported to your town, then you'll be able to keep up with large amounts of sausages for your town. So anyways, I just wanted to point out that development perk. There are more, obviously development perks. I highly recommend that you look through all of them and kind of think about what's the best for your town and your regional setup and all that kind of stuff. But for now, I just wanted to point that one out, addressing, and like I said, I've seen very common feedback so far that people are struggling with keeping up with the requirements of the tools and the iron. The mining of the iron is really slow. So, but that being said, as you can see, once again, we are still having no problems keeping up with the tools. We still have 19 tools from that first round of production that we did, and we've still just had that one family on the iron mine, and they're, whenever we run low on tools again, we'll have more iron in supply to make a bunch more, and it should be no problem. Like I said, the only issue we'll run into is once this mine depletes, and then we'll start to import them. But at that point, we will have our Regensburg Guildsman. We can just go ahead and unlock this perk, why not? Now we know that when we get to that point, we'll have a cheaper import cost on iron, and we can go ahead and take a look at that here. Iron ore. So import price right here is 11 regional wealth after we took the perk. So just for your reference there. And then also salt. I believe salt we won't be able to see unless we unlock the trade route because it's a major trade. Yeah. So sorry, that's wheat, but salt's down here. Same thing. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm not going to unlock that one, but just know that. You know, if you are doing that build with the butchered shops, and once again, I'll have guides with more specifics on these setups and stuff. But just know for now that if you take that development point, you could go ahead and utilize those benefits there. Cool. All right, so we are in autumn now of our second year. Looks like our mushroom deposit is getting near the ends of what we're able to harvest from it. Also, our fishing, I don't think we, yeah, okay, so we didn't adjust the reserve here. That's another thing you could play around with. There is a guide. I have other food production guides where I've linked. There's a highly reputable fishing guide, which I believe is still exactly the same way that it functions with the reproduction of the ponds and stuff. I'll probably link that here in this description as well. It's one of the best guides that's out there as far as it's a written guide that you can look at. It has all the data as far as what exact reserve amounts do you want to put for each situation if you have a regular fishing pond or a rich fishing pond, and how many workers you have assigned and all those kind of variables to make sure that it constantly reproduces at the maximum rate. All right, so it looks like we're out of mushrooms here. Those are done, so we'll go ahead and take off our forager hut worker. Let's go ahead and add this herb garden here too, in case we get villagers become sick again. Then we don't want them to stay sick for long. If we have herbs in the town, then they'll get back to their work tasks as soon as possible. You can see we're starting to get some beetroots coming in here, and I'm sure that will continue to ramp up as they continue to plant the rest of these, and they get established in the production chain. So yeah, really not bad, guys. There's not too many other things I wanted to cover. Obviously, at this point, you could, we could have been doing it for a while ago, but you could, build your manor and think about upgrading it to a castle, all that kind of stuff. We do want to have a manor either way, even if we don't want to upgrade it to a castle. You want a manor either way. So we kind of stopped producing planks for a bit there because we were focused on other stuff that I was explaining. But we'll get some planks here and build our manor. Like I said, I'm not going to worry about building a castle in this one because I have other videos and other guides that show more about that. If you're interested, definitely check those out. Castles are really cool. They're definitely really cool. I'm not saying don't build a castle. You definitely should. If you want to build a castle, you definitely should. They are really cool. All right. So, but yeah, like I said, in this video, we're just kind of focusing on, how to get your town started and what changes you might notice as you're trying to do a new playthrough here. And getting everything established. So let's take a look here at our level 2 houses. We upgraded a couple of these here. So we'll see now they want a third category of food, which is similar to what it was before, except you'll notice it just takes these food categories that we had originally and divides them into 3 different sections now. So it's the first level 1 is more lenient as far as, you can have 4 different options that cover this one category. Then this gets reduced. Now you need foraged goods, vegetables, or grains for this first category, meats or fishes, second category, animal produce, fruits for third category. So that means if we were to fulfill this third category of food, we don't have berries in this region, right? We had the mushrooms instead. So that being said, we will not be able to get fruits. The only thing we would be able to get for this category within our town setup would be the animal produce, aka these pig backyard extensions here. Once again, we can see that on the tooltip, which is really nice and convenient. Once again, we have a few pork here. We can see there's 3 pork in here. I'm not, I think you need to build quite a bit of these to really see any significant sort of production on these. But that being said, along with our affinity bonus, if we just went ahead and filled out like all of these houses with the pigs, I'm sure we would have a pretty decent source of pork coming in. And we do have a decent amount of regional wealth, so might as well. We can upgrade a couple more houses, and I actually meant to do the animal pen, not the the upgrade, but it's all good. Just put some more animal pens here. Why not? just so we can see, what happens if we really ramp that up. But yeah, honestly, guys, there's really not too much else to show. We can go ahead and add a, let's build our manor here. I'm not going to put it in any, crazy cool location or anything. I'm just going to put it near the town so we can construct it in not too long. And then, the other thing is, of course, the clay over here. So we could put another mining pit and make sure we get clay coming in. And we could add to our trade. We could export clay. Probably not just the raw clay, but we would want to turn it into the roof tiles. So if we put like a roof tile building over here, then we could produce roof tiles and sell those at the trading post. And then we would also have them ready for when we need to create upgrade our houses to level 3. One thing to note here real quick, and this is simply just an issue that's temporary in the beta, is that when you're upgrading your housing here, you will run into an issue most likely with clothing. Even if we are supplying clothing here, to be honest, it's buggy right now currently on the beta, so you'll probably notice some issues with, even if you have clothing in production or in your town and you have it in the storehouse that they should be putting on the marketplace, even if you have everything set up correctly, you'll probably run into issues where your upgraded houses are not getting the clothing supply that they need. I've seen many reports and from the Manor Lords team that is bugged right now, so that will be fixed. But just note for now, if you're not getting your clothing supplied, it's not you, it's just a bug in the game. So but that being said, to piggyback on what we were talking about earlier with the changes to the the different resource categories and whatnot, that applies with the clothing. So right, you can't just make leather now and supply leather as a clothing demand. Those sort of materials which are needed to produce actual clothing, like leather and yarn and stuff like that, are not actually a clothing. They do not supply a clothing demand now. You need to actually create clothing. You need to actually use the materials to turn into clothing. So you need to create either shoes at a let's see, we put animal pens on almost all those, but right here, the cobbler's workshop. So you would need to either get a cobbler's workshop up and have the actual hides that you can turn into leather and then turn those into shoes at the cobbler's workshop, or you need to have a production chain that goes into the weaver's workshop to produce to produce yarn and linen. And then at that point you can produce clothing, which would be from the tailor's workshop right here. So then you can produce clothes, cloaks, and gambesons. Gambesons are like a armor for your military, so not those, but clothes. I believe clothes and cloaks and shoes should fulfill your actual clothing requirements here on your housing. So really got to think ahead about that now. It's not as easy as just make some yarn or make some leather and then clothing demands are covered. That does not work anymore. But like I said, just keep in mind that it is kind of bugged right now. So even if you are doing it properly, you'll probably run into some issues with that. And we never finished up our livestock setup here either. But once again, I just wanted to point out that is extremely desirable. So I would definitely recommend staff up, get a livestock trading post, staff that up, and set import on some sheep. I don't know, let's bring in like 10 sheep or so, and you'll want to go ahead and build a pasture, which is in the farming section right here. So we could have a pasture over here, and then we would have our sheep farm right next to that. And so that way we'd be producing wool, and then we'd have sheep coming in that we could also put a butcher shop and slaughter them for production of meat and hides. And once again, we are done with the fishing for now because we're going to get this iced over and they can't fish during the winter anymore. Looks like our manor is done. So at this point, if we had the materials, we could mess around with making a castle or whatever, and upgrade it and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Like I said, check out, I've got other videos specifically about the castle planner and all the details along with that, the new resources that you need, because the different categories of stone, like here we only had the regular stone node. As we can see here in the construction tab, we only have rubble stone. So that we gathered all the rubble stone that was available there. And the rubble stone is only good for certain things like some building tasks. You can turn the rubble stone into mortar, which is also needed for the castle upgrades and such, but you cannot turn them into the actual stone blocks that you need to create the walls and, you know, the upgraded level 2 castle towers and all that kind of stuff. So that's another thing. Maybe, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you might want to look out for, if you're interested in doing that, you might want to look out for a rich stone deposit in your region as well. But you know, it's not, I wouldn't say that having a rich stone deposit is more desirable than, you know, a good setup of food deposits, or even I think like a rich iron node is probably more desirable than a rich stone node. You know, it could be cool to have the rich stone deposit to be able to make all the, you know, the stone blocks if you really want to have like a really large castle set up, and it would be super expensive otherwise. But I would definitely recommend prioritizing a good setup of food resource nodes in your region first and foremost, and then secondly would probably be iron. You know, I think you probably at least need like a regular iron node. It's not, you know, you could still supply your town with the tools and stuff even if you don't have a regular iron node. You would just need to get trade up and running pretty quickly, and make sure that you're starting to get some iron imported into your town basically by the second year. Otherwise you'll probably run out of tools by that point. So those are you know, kind of some of the main things that you want to look out for as you come into the new updates here. You know, at this point we could staff up our clay and our mining in the furnace and sell the roof tiles or whatever else, right? So that would boost up our trade even more. But you can see, I mean, we've got a good amount of regional wealth. We would be able to go here to the construction tab and unlock the roof tiles, trade route, export those. You know, we don't need any surplus on those currently, unless we could think about getting the materials that we need for the church. Oh, also, yeah, this is a side note too here. I should have mentioned that as I was going on about the new stone blocks and the mortar and such. Those are also needed for the church now too. So, but like I said, I wouldn't really think about like prioritizing having a rich stone deposit in your region just to be able to upgrade your church, you know, or build like a modest sized castle or whatever. I would really only think about that if you're trying to build like a really large castle setup. As far as being able to upgrade your church and stuff, I would just import the blocks, the 20 stone blocks that you need for the church here, just to get that done as a one-time thing. The mortar you can create on your own, no problem. That's, once again, it's just under here in the industry tab, lime kiln, and you can just create mortar from the regular rubble stone, which you'll most likely have access to. So you can, like I said, I would recommend just don't worry about the stone blocks, to be honest. Unless you're really trying to build a big castle, just import the stone blocks that you need to upgrade your church, and then don't worry about them too much beyond that. But yeah, as you can see, we're starting to get some livestock coming in here. Our livestock traders are starting to go out and supply our town with some sheep. And also I wanted to note for you guys here too, the other really good thing with sheep, like I was mentioning earlier, I really think that sheep are going to be probably one of the most desirable things. I really honestly think that pretty much every playthrough you should probably invest in sheep now, because there was also another development point beforehand, which was for the sheep breeding, which allowed the sheep to passively reproduce and, you know, gain more sheep. That happens regular now. That happens naturally. So once again, without having to spend a development point here, the sheep essentially, livestock have essentially received a buff in that regard. So you will notice, we might not notice too much here because we're nearing the end of our playthrough for this video, because we've already covered so many things. But you will notice, even if you import only like 5 or 10 sheep, you will notice that pretty soon they will start to reproduce, and you'll start getting lambs. And the lambs will just, they take some time, but the lambs eventually mature into full sheep themselves, and then you have a full cycle of sheep constantly reproducing and growing. So it's really good. So that being said, it is, kind of the sooner that you can invest into some sheep will be better for you, because then you will start the process of their natural reproduction as early as possible. So we can keep an eye on that here as we near the end of the video. but we have covered most of the things that I wanted to show here. And you know, we've got a really strong setup, as you can see. I mean, we've got 12 months of food. The only reason our fuel supply is low is because I've just told them to basically sell all charcoal. I have zero reserves. You know, we can just bump this up to, you know, keep like a surplus of 40 charcoal in the town or something like that. And that way, we don't use so much. You know, we can see now we've told them, let's keep more of that charcoal around for the town. Don't sell it all, kind of thing. So, but yeah, you can see we're all set. Approval is very high. We don't have any negative approval really. You can see there's a little bit of pork coming in, right, from our backyard extensions there we created. Got plenty of mushrooms, good amount of fish. We can see the beetroots are starting to come in now here too. So we've got, you know, a variety of food. Of course, as we expanded our town, we of course need more and more and more, but you know, you just place more backyard extensions, place more animal pens, you know, more veggies, add orchards, etc., right? So you got plenty of options here. So yeah, honestly, things are looking pretty good, guys. I just want to show you real quick before we end if we can see any of these sheep reproduce, just so you can see that you will start getting the lambs passively here. Then other than that, I think we've covered pretty much everything. As far as like marketplace distribution and all that kind of stuff, guys, it's pretty much the same as it was before. I don't think anything has really been changed here. It is always a good idea to set some overstock on your market. That way they stay ahead on the supplies. It's always a really good idea to do that. I usually have at least 5 or 10 on the overstock is always good. And we can see here, like our storehouse is good. We're in the green in that, but our granary looks like it's in the red. So we'll probably want to assign a second granary worker right there. Probably also want to upgrade the granary. I'm not going to worry about it right now, but so we can see now we're looking better with our supply. You know, the visual for our supply demands here, not too bad. And as far as like the setup of the town, which I was, you know, kind of illustrating as we were getting started here too, the logistics and, you know, placement of all your buildings and travel distance and all that kind of stuff is still a massive factor, which is totally, you know, you totally need to pay attention to. It's not like any of that has been changed. So let's see. Like I said, guys, there's really not too much else I want to show you. I'll probably skip ahead just to show you that the sheep do reproduce into lambs, but automatically. But that's probably going to be about it for this video here, guys. Like I said, at this point, maybe you know, then we'd want to turn one of these into a butcher's workshop, and then we'd want to tell them to start butchering our livestock, and you know, or start producing sausages from the pork that we're producing, and things like that, right? And just kind of keep expanding and modifying our setup here. So I just wanted to show you guys here right at the end, like I said, that the sheep do reproduce passively, and you can see here I only imported 10 sheep into the town, and now we have those plus 2 lambs. So they've already started to reproduce, and you can see the lambs are now starting to come in, and the lambs will grow up to become sheep themselves. And so now we have a self-sustaining cycle of sheep breeding and continuing to keep up with our livestock demands. And I don't, you know, once again, I don't think this is necessarily enough to sustain if you're going to do constant butchering. I'll have more info on that. I do also have a butcher's shop guide from when that came out in one of the updates last year or so, which has a little more information on that. But I'll also be, once again, revamping with a bunch of new setups, specifically with detailed information on how to create some more production chains for new food setups with the new development points and environmental affinities and backyard extensions, and new resource production chains with the new resource subcategories and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this playthrough and enjoyed this video, and I hope it will help you out with your own playthroughs as you're discovering the new updates here in the beta and everything. But just remember, guys, this is currently still on the beta, which means it's still subject to change, and there'll probably be, you know, you'll encounter some bugs and stuff like that. My goal here was just to show you guys a bit of, you know, how things go as if you were to just hop into a new playthrough on the new updates, and give you guys some insights on some of the issues that have been encountered so far, how you can adapt to those, and some good new habits to utilize for constructing your new towns and the new updates. And yeah, once again, I have other guides and information tutorials here on my channel, so I invite you to check those out as well. And I hope to see you guys in the next video where we continue to check out everything in Manor Lords, guys. All right. See you guys in the next one. Peace.